We're back. Anthony?
How y'all doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I'm doing good. I don't know about these guys.
Yeah, that's who I was asking. These guys.
Oh, I'm an egomaniac. So no, but seriously though, what is it like to be human?
Well, what is human? What does it mean to be human?
Well, I guess some people would say being intelligent or self-aware. But does that make someone who has some kind of disorder not human?
Right, so does being human does it mean that you're a Homo sapien? Or does it mean that you're conscious? Because if it means that you're conscious, then like an AI would be a human. Or any other sentient being for that.
So I guess a good definition of human would be there's multiple criteria. The first one is you have to be a Homo sapien.
So a Neanderthal's not human.
Well, no, yeah, you're right. You're right. There's well, they're all dead, but I mean, yes, those are all human. Yeah, those are all. Yes, you're right. Those are all subcategories of human. But I guess today we're all that's left, except for some of the traits, and I mean, some people have Neanderthal genes,
right?
But today all that's left is
Homo sapien.
Yeah. So if you're that specific species, that's what I mean by that. And I guess when people say what's like being human, it's really the informal address of being awake and being self-aware. What do you think?
Being conscious, it's like kind of like Rene Descartes, like I think therefore I am, right? So like if you are this species and then you have the cognitive ability to think for yourself and ask yourself questions like, who am I? What am I? What is this? What do I want? I think that all qualifies as traits of being a human. But then the same question is, well, would an AI be a human? Or is it not a human because it's not this species, because it's not a Homo sapien? Or an intelligent alien that maybe could come to Earth in the past or in the future, would that be a human? Or would that just be another conscious being?
See, I don't know, because we obviously talked about the biological classification for being human. But so you have the denotation and the connotation of this. So denotation, for those of you who don't know, is what the textbook definition of something is. Connotation is what everybody knows it means.
Right.
I mean, there's a plethora of examples, so much so I can't even think of one. In Kentucky, where we're from, if you say, hey, can I get a ride with you? And someone says, well, I don't care to. That means they don't mind, or they will allow that. Whereas in the North or in California, if you say, hey, can I get a ride? And they're like, well, I don't care to. That means they don't want to.
Right.
Okay. At least that's what my colleagues have told me. Somebody in California listening to this might correct us. Please let me know. But I guess when the connotation of being human is that intelligence and being self-aware, whereas the denotation is the biological standard. Does that make sense?
Right.
So maybe in the future, robots, by the connotation, will just have to change because they will not fit the biological.
Well, here's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what is more important to us when it comes to valuing another being? Them being a human or them being conscious? You see what I'm saying? If you have two people, right, and one person is brain dead, who is a Homo sapien, and then this other species, whether it's a Sasquatch or an alien or an AI, and it's completely conscious, and he can talk to you and stuff, which one is more important? The person that is the same species as you, that has no cognitive ability at all, or the thing that is another conscious being that can think for itself and form its own opinions and thoughts and love and hate? Which one is more important?
See, that right there is such a good question, because it really gets down to the breakdown. And very quickly I see us stripping down to morality and morals at its core. So in reality, we've seen this throughout human history. Joseph Stalin famously said that one death is a tragedy, but a million deaths is a statistic.
Right.
Exactly. And what that means is that anything is possible in this world. So if you humanize something, if you assign it value, then it's valuable. But all of that can be stripped away. The fact that we all have lives and feelings and aspirations and hopes and individual tragedies and just we have our lives, that doesn't necessarily make us valuable to other humans by default. And I'm sorry my computer likes to make noise while we're doing these kinds of presentations. But I think really what it boils down to is how do we assign value to it? And I think from a Judeo-Christian society like the United States, like the West, Europe, we take for granted what we're taught. If you have two cavemen that come at each other from different tribes, more than likely there will be violence, if not killing. If they can't understand each other, if the other one has something they want or there's some kind of threat, and by default there would be very little sorrow and remorse in the other tribe killing and maybe even eating the opposite tribe.
See, consciousness itself is a branch of science that is fairly undiscovered. I mean, we still have a lot to find out about consciousness. And when you just said that, it just occurred to me that we obviously know that there's different levels of consciousness with species on just this planet. But I feel like there's different levels of consciousness within humans itself. Like, I feel like this experience that you and I have is a different conscious experience than a caveman or than a tribal guy who's pretty much still hunter and gatherer in a village. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's I couldn't agree with that more. I wanted to read this quote here from Emerson M. Pugh. It's spelled P-U-G-H. And as you guys will learn, I'm horrible at vernacular. But it says, if the human brain were so simple that we could understand it, we would be so simple that we couldn't.
I like that.
I've heard that quote a few years ago, and I just think that's such a brilliant take, because the human brain is so remarkably complex that it's hard to understand. Computer systems that we developed in many ways outperform the human brain easily, in, as far as memory, raw data capacity, processing power. And yet in so many ways the human brain shits all over computers, even modern quantum computers, which are starting to develop. Now, I don't know if that'll forever be the case. It obviously won't be, but in the 1960s and 70s, if you watch some of the like the futuristic movies like Back to the Future, they all thought that the human brain was very simple, right? Mm-hmm. And they predicted that in a very little amount of time, according to Moore's law, which means that we're doubling computer power basically every year. That's
right.
what the number of transistors and all that. They basically thought that by the year 2000, computers would be way smarter than us, that we could talk with computers. And I don't know if you guys have ever used Siri or not, but we're nowhere close to that.
Right, absolutely not.
And the reason for that is we didn't appreciate or understand how just overwhelmingly powerful our brains are.
Right.
I'm looking right now at Anthony. I'm looking at the microphone, the computer, and I'm taking in billions of photons or trillions of photons, and I'm processing that instantaneously. I have depth perception. My ears can listen to the vibrations of sound and interpret that, and then from simultaneously I can access all of the thoughts and words in my brain and spit that out as language. And the process of that is so complex. I have to come up with a thought, which is a profound thing in and of itself, incredibly complex, even more so than what I'm about to say. Then I have to articulate that, choose my words, choose how I'm going to say it, control my lungs and vocal cords and breathing and even my hand gestures to match that. And it happens all automatically. And this is thought of as a rudimentary, simple task. Okay? The human brain is so remarkable. And not only is it doing that, it's running my heart rate, it's running my body temperature, the basic metabolism, and it's doing everything.
Doesn't it feel like, well, I know it feels like this to me, that our mind is limited by our body?
Yeah.
Big time, though.
Yeah. And
so, well, I was going to ask you this. Do you think we'll ever come to the point where we'll be able to download our minds into a computer?
See, I don't know. And I think this really does boil down. This is where science and philosophy and morality and even religion meet hand in hand. We as a species our scientists have not identified consciousness.
Right.
So if I built a clone of myself and I started putting individual pieces of my brain into that clone, at what point
is it not you anymore?
Is it not me?
Right. That's what I was about to ask.
That's the thing. So do I eventually move over? Is there a certain atom or cluster of atoms or whole piece of my brain that is actually me? What piece of that's my memory? What piece of that is actually the operating system? I don't know if you guys are...
It's weird to think about, especially if they were to take neuron by neuron and replace it with an artificial neuron. So at what point does it switch over?
Is it
because if they put one artificial neuron in your brain, you would still be you.
Yeah.
But at what point do you switch over?
See, that's the question. I've seen many a documentary and read a lot of articles about this where the brain looks like some kind of weird tube, like consciousness looks like some kind of weird tube cluster in the mind. I don't know if there's one atom, one neuron, or the whole thing, which would compose of billions of atoms, actually is the consciousness, and at what point you would start to switch over. I don't know if you did that, if you duplicate. Some people go on a deeper level. For example, why am I myself? Why is it I wake up every morning and I've not switched off to my consciousness is still the same? Do I actually exist? Why did I wake up? There's in the average human body, there's 700 trillion atoms. So if you took 700 trillion, which is a big fucking number, and you multiply that by a trillion, that's what the average Joe has in their body. So imagine how many atoms there are in the entire universe. It's so
incomprehensible.
It's literally it's probably the most incomprehensible number there is. Literally, what could there be more of? I'm
Electrons.
sure. Well, sure, yeah. If you break down the actual atoms, yes, obviously, but but you get my point. So why did me personally? Why am I my set of atoms instead of yours?
Right.
Why? What is the likelihood that I would wake up when I was born and become this set of atoms? Why am I getting to view this, whereas you're getting to view your stuff, and someone else is getting to view theirs, and people in the past and in the future will have viewed their separate sets of consciousness.
I have to ask, do you think that consciousness is the reason that our species breaks off from our nature? You see what I'm saying? Is the reason that we want to be monogamous and we don't want to kill our enemies and steal from them, just like a normal animal, is because we're conscious?
No.
You don't think
I
that?
do not think that, and here's why. We do. Okay, if you take, and there's been many a case study of this, okay? If you take some kind of child who was never around society, and you don't give them language, you don't give them lessons and things like that, okay? So they turn out completely different, okay? They're literally like an animal. So what I'm saying is society, and a lot of the stuff within society, including religion of many sorts, and language is what the brain uses as the wheels and tires to get around. Here's what I mean by that. If you take a child who is blind and deaf, okay, and they've learned no language of any sort, be it sign language, be it English, be it any kind of language, they do not have the ability to think. We all have an inner monologue that we basically use to drive around in our brain and come up with more and more articulate thoughts. We use this like building blocks. I'm doing right now speaking. You're doing this right now listening to me and coming up with your own thoughts. If you take that away, the human is much more like an animal. Much more like an animal. We have evolved as a species over millions of years, long before the Stone Age, to develop a language. We are designed to operate with society. With that comes religion, lore, stories, all of this kind of stuff. Human beings are uniquely designed to use culture, essentially, to be conscious. So if I didn't learn English or any kind of language, I would be, according to the studies and what they've actually seen people be, almost like a retarded person. That's just the way it is. So by default, I guess to answer your question, I don't think so. I think that human beings aren't like that.
Well, now that you said it, I think that it's probably religion. That was probably the inception of our breakaway from our animalistic nature. But so I mean, what do they accredit the oldest known religion?
So
Zoroastrianism, I think.
I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, religion's been around longer than history. Religion, the first cave drawings had religious aspects to it. They were mystified by the stars and by thunder and lightning. Religion's always been around. Religion's been around as long as consciousness has been around. But also, language has been around. So, I forget the exact order, but what eventually happened, grass was actually a huge component in Homo sapiens and Homo erectus evolving, okay? I believe it was Homo, and you guys that are really big into biology.
It came Erectus and then Neanderthal and us.
Well, there's like a ton. Of
I'm saying Neanderthal is like our brother.
Yeah,
our sibling.
Yes. Oh God, yeah. Neanderthals were like way closer.
Is like our parent.
Well, yeah, but so I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know. I've studied this in college and I've already forgotten a lot of it. But what I'm trying to say is, we were essentially. And this is for those of you who believe evolution, and at this point I'd say it's pretty compelling.
Believe evolution.
I know. Yeah, you should probably believe in evolution. But anyway, I appreciate diversity of thought. So, assuming that you believe in evolution, essentially ape-like figures or monkeys or whatever you want to call them, were in trees, essentially. And as trees became more and more sparse in Africa, and this was largely due to grass, they had to basically walk between trees to get from place to place. And so those that could stand on 2 feet and see above the grass to spot predators and things of that nature were more likely to survive. And eventually, being able to communicate became important. So these monkeys essentially came out of monkeys, apes, whatever you want to call them. They came out of the trees, became farther apart, and this was largely because of grass. Grass is a relatively new thing in the history of life, and so because of that, they had to communicate with each other more and more. So they began upright, so they could see over the grass, and developed a more sophisticated vocal cord system. And so after a while, they developed language and bigger brains to process that. And so language, along with some silicon tools, which was really the first human technology, became more and more prevalent. And so the brains kept getting bigger and bigger until eventually...
So do you think that the evolution of the brain caused the evolution of technology, or the evolution of technology caused the evolution of the brain?
I believe that the evolution of technology caused the evolution of the brain, because the first creature... The whole idea of Darwinism is that you have a mutation, which is like a genetic accident or an error that happens to benefit you. So some creature millions of years ago would have had a slightly bigger brain than the last generation, just big enough to start using, hey, wait a minute, I can make a spear,
well, I use the
or I can make,
of an ape who realizes that putting his saliva on a stick and putting it down an ant hole gets a lot of ants to eat. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, do you think that his brain got bigger, or that was just a coincidence that he got lucky?
No, what happens is, and this is very simple, this is just evolution. So the way it works is that monkey or that ape or whatever that figured that out has a bigger brain. That's how he was able to figure it out. Does that make sense? And so because he was able to...
Was that a certainty? You don't think that could be an accident?
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be an accident.
If he had a brain that was too small, he wouldn't remember to do it a second time. Okay? My point is, if he has the ability to learn and do that, he's going to pass his genes on to the next generation.
Right, that's
they're going to have bigger brains.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So the tools eventually benefited the natural selection, and it kept getting more and more and more, and then it went beyond tools to language, essentially. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I don't know what order that went in, and I'm not an archaeologist or anything like that. But that's what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, but I'm not sure. Like, if to me, you saying that he had to have a bigger brain to remember that's sitting uneasy with me. And I'm not saying that you're incorrect, but I'm saying it seems just as likely that they all had the same brain, and he saw this. If there was mud on the stick or whatever, and then. If any one of them would have saw it, they would have remembered it. But he got lucky. It was a coincidence that he found out how to do it. Then he was able to show his family that, and then as the next generation comes, then they all kept doing that, and they were all able to feed better than the other people, and that's. And then I guess maybe them eating better than everyone caused that family to evolve better.
It's possible. But it's the same thing. Because what you're saying is basically he survived and was able to reproduce.
Right, it's still better. Natural selection.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
Right, but you what you originally said was that technology caused the evolution of the brain. But then when I asked you that, you said that his brain was bigger than theirs, and that's why he remembered that. Well, if that's the case, then his brain evolved before the technology.
His brain would have evolved up to that point. So what I'm saying is, if he had a mutation, right, and his brain evolved just enough not to be able to do that, okay, if his brain evolved just enough not to be able to spit on a stick and stick it into the hole and get ants, okay. Uh-huh. If his brain evolved just enough to not be able to do that, and not to be able to remember to teach his children that, which is a pretty advanced concept in itself, then he wouldn't have been able to. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because just short is not good enough, essentially, for evolution. Okay, let's say that somebody had a mutation way back then, and they came out with a perfect Homo sapien of today. Like, you just were magically born. You had 100 billion mutations, and you literally were the child of one of these. But then you got stoned to death. Your genes wouldn't have gone on, and we'd be back to square one. So it involves a lot of luck, obviously. But that's the kind of the natural progression of that, if that makes sense.
So, have you ever heard of the stoned ape theory?
The stoned ape theory?
Right.
No.
Well,
maybe I have. Hold on.
Saying that the jump in evolution in our species is accredited to psychedelic mushrooms, since psychedelics do expand consciousness.
I've never heard that theory, and I'm very skeptical of it.
You are skeptical of it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've never done psychedelics.
Yeah.
But are you aware that psychedelics do expand consciousness? I mean, that's what the word psychedelic means.
Defined expand consciousness.
Makes you see things clearer than you do when you're sober. Makes you learn things about yourself that you wouldn't normally be able to see. Mm-hmm. Like when you do psychedelics, it's kind of like opens the door, and it's kind of like going in your attic and seeing all the shit that you've been stuffing up there that you don't want to deal with. Like if you lie too much to your loved ones, or you, like you said earlier, you're a procrastinator. Well, if you were to do some LSD or some psilocybin mushrooms, it would come to the surface, and you would say, okay, I got to stop fucking procrastinating. I can't live my life like this. So that's why they say it expands consciousness. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if I can see the spectrum of the universe when I do a lot of mushrooms, I could easily see an early primate learning how to throw a rock differently or sharpen a rock.
Now I don't want to sit here at this table, not an archaeologist, and never heard of this theory until just now and tried to debunk the entire thing. But there's two problems I do see with it. The first problem is, if I were to do a drug that made me 100 times smarter, it would not change my DNA, and it would not be passed on to my offspring. Meaning that as soon as I died, they wouldn't be any smarter. The second
Well,
problem,
hold on. Let me talk on that.
Okay.
Well, just because it doesn't change your DNA doesn't mean that it wouldn't change your psyche and change the way that you saw things. Mm-hmm. So, for example, like if you did psychedelics and you had a vision that your dad killed someone, when you come back, your DNA is the same, but now you have to live life knowing that your dad killed someone. For the same way, if you were to do psychedelics, and like I said, if an ape were to do psychedelics and see that there was a new way to sharpen this spear, well, his DNA is still the same, but now he can show his family the way to sharpen this spear. And now they would show that to their next generation.
But the one thing, how did they develop brains that were... Okay, here's the thing. If the apes... There's two problems with this, and I had to get to the second point for this to make sense, okay? First off, Homo sapiens, our species, okay, is not evolving at a very fast rate because we are so successful, okay? When something is very successful in nature, they really stop evolving, okay? So what I mean by that is humans, ancient humans, kept evolving and evolving and evolving until they found something that worked. Does that make sense?
Right.
They kept evolving until they found something that worked. Because if they don't, or if you find something that works, there's no reason that natural selection will continue. Because
everybody would thrive.
Unless you come up with a product that is so much better than the last one that it replaces it, but then you have diminishing returns. And so my point is, with that example, the very early, even on the ape stage, there's 2 points I want to make. A, how do they develop brains from an evolutionary standpoint? Because my cat could not go and show other cats how to do something. The other cats would not comprehend it or remember it or anything like that or see the benefits, okay? You could train each cat individually, but they're not going to train other cats to do the same thing.
Right, but let's not talk about cats. Let's stick to talking about primates.
No, well, we're talking about primates because what I'm saying is, how did those primates develop a brain big enough and powerful enough to learn, remember, and share?
Say that one more time.
How did primates gain the ability, a physical hardware? Right? So we're gonna look at this from a computer standpoint. You got hardware and software, and I could put any psychedelic program onto a computer, and it might make it run better. I could put malware bytes on this and make it run a lot faster if I got rid of some of the bloatware and all that kind of crap. But it's still limited by the hardware. Okay, it's limited by the hardware. So what I'm saying is, how did the hardware improve to today's Homo sapiens? How did it evolve to that via psychedelics?
How much different is the hardware, since we can't actually see a brain of an early Homo sapien?
Very different. We can see what we can see is we have fossils, and we can actually see what the brain would have looked like inside of that. We can also see the technology and how their offspring was related. So we can see directly. Yeah.
So our brainal, what is it? Brainal cavity? How do you say it?
Sure. Skull cavity.
Our skull cavity today is bigger than an early Homo sapien.
Significantly. And in fact, if you look at the rate of calories that a brain burns.
So what are you saying caused that?
What I'm saying caused it?
Right.
Is there were mutations, okay? That were needed desperately, essentially, for survival, okay? And what that means is that jumps in brain power led to significant levels of success for that mutated specimen, who then passed that gene on to the remainder of this, or that new species caused from that mutation outdid the existing species, And that kept happening over and over and over again. That's why we have so many different categories of human. And I think the one right before, I'm pretty sure Neanderthals were like second to last place or second to first place. Second place. But I guess my point is, we as a species evolved because the bigger brain we had, the more successful we were. And we kept outdoing our predecessors over and over and over again. And what I'm saying is that's a hardware jump. Someone is born with a bigger processor or a more powerful processor, and that kept happening, and that is what caused the evolution to change, and not a chemical enhancement, which has been popularized by. I'm looking at the dates from which this theory came about.
McKenna.
Yeah, Terence McKenna. And I'm wondering if it has any kind of correlation with the Planet of the Apes movies. Not Planet of the Apes, but Rise of the Planet of the Apes, because it has a very similar premise where the apes are given a drug and it changes their intellect, but it also modifies their DNA. So when they mate, they keep their brain power.
If there is any correlation, I would think that it would be the other way around.
Well, it looks like he died in 2000.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if there's a book. I don't know very much about those movies, but I'm saying that either they probably got their premise from that or it's just a big coincidence.
Right.
So,
but like I said, if there is a correlation, then I'm pretty sure they would have got it from him and not the other way around.
Now, what about the evolution of that fungus or the mushrooms?
What about the evolution of it?
Yeah, like where were those mushrooms?
They grow on cow shit. I mean, we've seen that ancient civilizations have been worshiping cows for thousands of years.
Right, but did they have cows there? I don't know at what point the apes were actually in that area.
Right. But here's what I'm saying. Like, we don't know. This is a theory. We don't know how early in our evolution people started doing mushrooms. Like, was it Homo erectus or was it Homo sapiens that first discovered mushrooms?
Let me try to approach this from a different way. You tell me. Walk me through how psychedelics led or helped lead ancient organisms to modern day humans.
Okay, so you're this old hunter and gatherer guy, and you walk around all day naked with this spear, and you're looking for fruit and berries and things to kill. And then all of a sudden, you find this mushroom, and you eat it, and you see the universe unfold before your eyes.
Right.
And you're seeing all this shit about your family, and you see a new way to be happy and stuff. So then when you come back, your DNA's not changed, but that experience just wiped you. It changes your life forever. Once you do a psychedelic, your life is never the same again, because
Okay, I get that. Okay, so then.
So now you live life differently. So now you hunt and you live and you love. Everything is different. Your life is no longer the same because your psyche is different from this drug. You see what I'm saying? So whether it's a physical evolution or not, I agree with you. It probably is not a physical evolution. But we do see with ancient civilizations that were doing a lot of psychedelics. So therefore, when you do psychedelics, you live your life differently after that.
Okay, so here's my question. Now, you're probably aware that most primates are not carnivores. They do not eat meat. Usually they're herbivores.
Okay.
Do you know why human beings eat meat?
No, I do not know.
So, and I'm not a doctor, but basically, our brains use a ton of energy. They use a ton of energy. 25% of your metabolic rate is from your brain. Okay, so the typical human, I guess, burns about 2,000 calories a day. So it means your brain burns by itself 500 calories a day. So I mean, looking at my weight, I guess it means I need to do some more Sudoku puzzles or something like that. Mm-hmm. But my big question is, how did apes evolve to the point, like in your example, you're saying, you're hunter-gatherer and all of that. At that point, how did they evolve to such a high brain rate at that point I guess what I'm saying is, how did it get to that point?
I think that we should both obviously do more research on it. But I'm just saying, I think it would be naive to say that since we do know that ancient civilizations were doing psychedelics, that it had no impact on life in general. You see what I'm saying? And if it's changing the way you live your life completely, is it not naive to say that there's no way that it had any effect on evolution?
I could buy the argument that some of the major religions might have sprouted about because of psychedelics.
Well, no, but a lot of major religions don't like psychedelics, because when you do psychedelics, you're coming face to face with God.
Well, first off, there's no religion that has survived that long. There's no religion from the time of ancient man and Homo erectus or anything like that that is even close to having survived. And most of their influences even are most religious influences are from 3,000 years ago, okay, which is well before. I mean maybe even 5,000 years ago, but we're talking about 200, 300,000 years ago. I mean, this is like deep time kind of stuff.
Right.
So my point is, I think that I could buy an argument where you say, okay, these ancient humans had evolved to a point where they could comprehend things, and they already had language and all that, and they did psychedelics, and it influenced how they behaved. It influenced, maybe one of them really got on a trip and came up with one of their religious things, and it helped develop a language, and that helped that particular group of ancient human survive better, and that helped pass their I could buy something like that, but I cannot buy, and I don't know if this is the exact theory, maybe we need to do research on this, I can't buy the idea that it
changed the DNA.
It changed the DNA. Yeah. Right. So what I'm saying is, why is it in our genetics that if I took my DNA and I put it in mixed it with someone else with 2 X chromosomes, okay, I'm going to get a human, hopefully, that is comparable in intelligence to any other human.
So it would be more feasible to you to say that psychedelics sped up the evolution of technology more than it changed evolution of DNA at all.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, ancient apes, okay, if they did psychedelics, I don't think they could have experienced anything that would have overwhelmed, or I don't think they had the brain power to be influenced. I think you could have shown them everything in the world and they would forget it, or they wouldn't be able to communicate that. Not until they had language and maybe even some kind of drawings. I mean, writing came along really around Egypt, which is way later, but paper writing. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think that I could see a case where you say, okay, what happened was these ancient humans had already developed language, okay? They developed stories, they had legends and all that stuff, and one of them did psychedelics, and it expanded their mind, and because of that, he developed a new language or a new religion that was somehow better than the former, which helped that group survive and pass on their genetics further along the line. I could buy that argument, but it's literally probably completely impossible to confirm or deny, and that's why these kind of theories never go away.
You don't think it's... I know you don't have any experience with psychedelics, but you don't think it's strange that they've outlawed them? Because to me, it seems like they've outlawed them for a specific reason, which is to keep us dumb.
Why did they outlaw alcohol?
Why did they outlaw alcohol?
Yeah, why did they have prohibition?
I don't know why they did, but I know they should have, because it's terrible for you.
What, alcohol?
Yeah. I mean, it's awful for you. It kills how many people a year? It's killed how many people in history? You know how many people psychedelics has killed ever?
I mean, you're probably going to say 0.
No, because some people have done LSD and jumped off buildings, like a handful.
Yeah, but no,
I mean, actual overdoses.
I don't want to go too far into politics, but I will say that I'm not an advocate of making alcohol illegal. And if we want to do a podcast going over prohibition and some of the consequences of that, like the rise in
we can't make alcohol illegal because people will go nuts.
Yeah, psychedelics and things like that are illegal in a lot of countries. Because basically people are scared of the effects of them, and yeah, I don't really have a good reason. I'm an advocate for legalizing most drugs, despite the fact I don't use drugs personally. I don't even drink, just because for me, I find it gives me an element of clarity that most people don't have. But for other people, I think psychedelics are on the opposite end of the spectrum and maybe give you the same result. So
I mean, there's so many studies like
yeah.
MDMA. It shows curing PTSD. Like ayahuasca and like mushrooms are helping heroin and meth addicts. And like I said, no one's dying, no one's overdosing, and it expands. It helps people like with their psyche. Mm-hmm. It's just, to me, it seems malicious that they are outlawing them. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense to me, and it's like they don't want people to ask questions, because every time you do psychedelics, you look at the shit like, why do these guys have the power? What are they telling us to do this for? Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what they're scared of.
Right.
And I feel like in the 70s, when everybody was going nuts, that's when we were like, we got to get we got to get a hold of this. Who was it that made all those Schedule 1? You know, Kennedy? No, Kennedy was 60s. When Kennedy died, 68?
63.
63. So who outlawed the psychedelics?
1 second here. Yeah, he died on November 22nd, 63.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. But like I said...
What year was it? See, the war on drugs... 1 second here.
So Reagan,
I know that was
Nixon?
really Reagan, mostly.
Because, you know, I mean, I know you know that they were going nuts on the psychedelics
Yeah, that was
in the
Nixon
70s.
into Reagan. Yeah, well, yeah, you had Woodstock. I don't know, to be honest with you.
Oh, it doesn't say who outlawed them?
Let me look.
So on October 25th, 1968, Lyndon B. Johnson signed a bill that outlawed LSD. He also did the Safe Streets Acts, the Juvenile Delinquency Prevention Act, gun control legislation, new laws to combat alcoholism, and new powers deal with those who riot in our cities and combat organized crime. You know,
and crime rate went up.
Talking to you just in the past few days, I've really come to hate Lyndon B. Johnson.
Wow, yeah.
It's really
careful. He might be called a racist.
I might be called a racist.
Yeah.
I might be called a racist because I hate the guy who said he will be having those niggers voting for 200 years.
Now, Anthony, just because that's a fact doesn't mean it means anything.
Well, if anybody calls me racist, you know what I will say to them? Not a damn thing. Because I do not talk to morons.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a fair argument. To be honest with you, governments have historically banned things. If you look at the Opium Wars, if you look at Prohibition, there's a long history of governments trying to ban.
But it's so silly because when they outlaw things, it just makes people want them more. You see in like European countries where alcohol is illegal for kids at 16, there's like no issues with alcohol really because it's not a big deal. Oh, you can drink when you're 16. Mm-hmm. But over here, we gotta wait till we're 21, and everybody wants to get drunk from the time they're 10 to the time they're forever.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't want to get too far into politics because we're trying to cover human consciousness here. But one of the big things is, and I guess this really does feed into that argument, human nature, you want what you can't have. If you make something illegal, it becomes cool. So during Prohibition, you saw alcohol prices skyrocket. First off, mm-hmm. And just like a Gucci T-shirt costing $50, it kind of made it cool. Okay, like, oh, you're bad. You're a badass because you drink alcohol. Same thing with marijuana today. So what happens? There's always a black market for products. Like, I mean, you can get shrooms or whatever today, psychedelics on the black market. Okay, no problem. It just makes the cost go way higher. What I'm curious to know on the science aspect is what kind of dopamine response psychedelics create. So I've heard so many people say about marijuana. Marijuana is not addictive. Marijuana is not addictive. Right. Marijuana is not addictive. Marijuana is addictive, just like anything else is addictive. It makes your brain create dopamine. Anything that makes your brain create dopamine is addictive, especially when you can consume it.
Here's why.
It's a fact.
I don't. It's a fact. Who said it was a fact?
No one disputes that marijuana makes your brain create dopamine.
Right.
And no one disputes the fact that it eventually
Here's what I'm
inhibits
saying,
your brain's
though. It
ability
is
to create.
addictive if you have an addictive personality. Anything that you enjoy can produce dopamine. If you have a gambling issue, every time you gamble, it produces dopamine. So therefore, if you have an addictive personality, you like the way gambling makes you feel, and it's addictive to you. Like the way I used to play professional Call of Duty. When I would play Call of Duty, it would make me feel so that type of way. Probably because dopamine was being released in my brain. Mm-hmm. So therefore, because I had an addictive personality, that I went back and do it.
Right.
But it's not physically addictive.
The difference,
meaning that I'm not going to have withdrawals when I stop doing it.
Well, yes, it depends on what happens, because here's the difference. THC makes sure the difference is when you play Call of Duty, it doesn't automatically force your brain to produce dopamine. Okay, when THC gets into your bloodstream, goes to your brain. Okay, it makes your brain produce dopamine.
Right.
And quite a bit of dopamine, a lot actually, more than Call of Duty, believe it or not. And so what happens is over time your brain changes its chemistry. Okay, to service that. It also ratchets down its sensitivity to dopamine. So let's say that marijuana creates 200 units of dopamine, right? And Call of Duty produced, let's say, 30 units, whereas heroin would create 10,000 units of dopamine, mm-hmm. Okay, or something that, or meth would create comparable. You get the idea. So 200 is not nearly as bad as heroin, and it might be a lot less than even nicotine, which is 400, but it's still a lot more than, and it really depends on the quantity of THC you're getting. And so what happens, and the problem with it is...
No, I've heard you say, you're going to tell me, right, that your brain it's harder for your brain to produce dopamine without it.
No, what I'm telling you is, that stays about the same. The sensitivity goes down. So let's say that I love Call of Duty, or I love sex, or I love... watching a movie or family time or getting a promotion at work. I love all those things because when that happens and I get that pat on the back, I get dopamine. And the evolution of our brains essentially has put that in. It's basically the wanting to do something. So it's healthy for you to want to achieve certain things. You set a goal, you hit that goal, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, you're happy, you have that warm feeling. That's literally your brain producing the dopamine, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, what happens once you do drugs, and drugs like meth, which is the worst, and heroin, which is really bad, and cocaine, like these really hard drugs, mm-hmm. they produce so much dopamine, it's ridiculous. The sensitivity of your brain to the dopamine ratchets down. Okay, you've heard about people. I think maybe you told me this. Somebody did like heroin or meth, and they like came in their pants. Right. Well, over time that goes down. Okay, mm-hmm. Your brain adjusts to that, and so getting a kiss from a hot girl or even sex and all that kind of stuff is dull. It's like, are you kidding me? Where's my heroin? Right. So my point is, marijuana creates a lot of dopamine, not nearly as much as heroin, but it's bankrupt for people to say it's not addicting. Nobody would ever jump down your throat for saying Call of Duty is addicting, right? If I said Call of Duty is addicting, nobody would say, "How dare you, Austin?"
Well, I would say that though.
You would say that?
I would say that.
Why?
Because here,
were you addicted to? Hold on. Were you addicted to Call of Duty?
I was.
Okay, so it's not stupid or wrong for me to say Call of Duty can be addicting. Can be addicting.
In my point of view, anything that you enjoy can be addicting if you have an addictive personality.
For tasks, for doing stuff. But for chemicals, when you introduce there's a difference between doing something
so
and
here's
chemicals.
What I'm saying. When you say it's addicting, if something is addictive chemically and you stop doing it, what does that mean for your body?
That you're going to go through dopamine withdrawals. That's what withdrawals.
So someone who was smoking weed every day before I went to the Air Force, who dropped on a dime on November 1st to give myself, I never had any withdrawals.
Sure,
I was fine.
But I know it depends on a lot of things. Okay, the amount of time you've been doing it. Okay, your individual brain, all those things. Somebody like Sawyer, for example, my brother, can't kick it. He doesn't have the willpower you do. His brain's been doing it a lot longer. He's been exposed to much higher doses of the chemical. It's there. To say that it's not there is a joke.
So why do we not see people in rehab for marijuana addiction?
Because of the difference of dopamine levels compared to if you could really
so then
refine
it's a small addiction, but it's a smaller addiction than nicotine.
Yeah, and how many people literally do smoke cigarettes even when they're on their deathbed?
Right.
Even when they're literally dying from it. So I mean, here's my point. It is addicting, okay? We can argue about how addictive it is. I'm perfectly fine to have that debate. But when somebody puts their nose up to me and says marijuana is not addictive, that's bullshit, okay? Everything can be addictive, but when you have a chemical that okay, for example, Katie, my girlfriend.
So does alcohol release dopamine?
Well, yes, it does.
How much?
I don't know the units.
More or less than nicotine?
Less than nicotine. I don't know how it compares to marijuana. I can look that stuff up. But let me just say this real quick, okay? Mm-hmm. If I play Call of Duty, or Katie plays Call of Duty, or anybody does, and I don't enjoy it for whatever reason, I'm not going to get the same dopamine rush as you. Or I might not get any dopamine. I might be annoyed by it. But when you put a chemical into your bloodstream that forces your brain to produce dopamine, it is always addictive every single time. I'm going to look these numbers up real quick. Okay, so we're having a little trouble finding the exact statistic on how much various drugs produce and how much dopamine they produce. But going back to the conversation, Anthony is finding information saying that marijuana is less addicting than caffeine, although I've seen many a situation where people cannot, and I don't like using personal examples for some kind of generic thing.
But here's what I'm saying. You're saying cannot. I don't think that's accurate. It's more like will not.
Yeah, will not. I've seen plenty of people. Oh, I need to lose weight. I can give up soda. Okay, we got a little caffeine withdrawal headache. But it's a whole different ball game that they will spend tons of money to get into the euphoria. So my question is, or basically my point, caffeine is addictive. Okay, it's actually healthy in a lot of ways. Okay, it can help you burn calories. It can help you get into a ketone state. It helps.
Marijuana's healthy in a lot of ways.
Well, it's healthy in the sense that it relieves stress if you're like a cancer patient. But the problem with marijuana is marijuana dulls actions because it damages your brain's pleasure center. If you look that up, there's plenty of information on that.
And there's also plenty of information that counters that.
Like what? Give me some information.
Plenty of productive people that smoke marijuana on a day-to-day basis.
That doesn't mean anything.
No, but
you can be productive. You can be productive.
So then, what are you saying?
What I'm saying is it dulls your ability to enjoy things. That's what I'm trying to say. It takes away your consciousness of his ability to enjoy things. So, for example, if I am
this is what I said. I just said that a moment ago. I said you're going to tell me that marijuana makes it harder to enjoy normal things without it.
Yeah, that's my point.
Right.
Yeah,
that's wrong.
Give me evidence that it's wrong. The physiological difference is it damages your brain's pleasure center. It's that simple. It makes it less sensitive to dopamine and forces your brain to produce it. I found a lot of marijuana advocate websites called weed.com and thesmokersclub.com, smoking joint weed. And let's see. Smoketheweed.net. I'm finding all this democraticunderground.com. All these guys are
find something that proves your point.
What I'm trying to say is it's so buried under all of this pro marijuana stuff that it's hard to find.
But so what? So where have you read that?
I can find the damage to the pleasure center. What I'm saying is I can't find the exact levels that compare it to caffeine. Okay, I cannot find it where I cannot find the stuff on the internet that tells me the level of dopamine produced by caffeine on average and the level of dopamine produced by the average joint. And we haven't even gone into the levels of new types of marijuana. So, for example, the website you're looking at might be comparing a very cheap generic type of marijuana and not the kinds that produce 20 times the amount of THC that a lot of people are smoking today. Or even the refined THC crystals and what do they call it? The syrups that they use in their vapes?
Yeah, like the nicotine syrup.
No, like the THC. They actually put like into what is it called? A tab or a? I'm very ignorant to this.
Dabs?
A dab, yes, a dab, yeah. As Anthony would say, my white half is showing here.
Well, no, so. I just think that this is something that because I know you've told me this years and years ago, and I think that you're stuck on it. And you won't come off of it. You're being an ideologue, like you.
Well, no. What I want to know.
Well, this says a 2012 study set out to investigate this and concluded that unlike users of other common drugs, frequent cannabis users do not suffer from lasting changes in dopamine levels. So I'm going to click on this 2012 study, ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. Dopamine release in chronic cannabis users. It's got some.
Why are they a chronic cannabis user?
Why are they a chronic...
Why is it considered a chronic cannabis user?
Because you probably smoke daily for years.
Why?
Why do you smoke?
Why do people smoke? Well,
because you enjoy it.
Let's take this argument away from... Let's take it actually away from the online statistics that we're trying to find, buried underneath lots of stuff here. Why are people so... I know dozens and dozens of people, okay, including... Katie's siblings, for example, who literally all they ever are interested in doing. Do you have weed? Oh, then I'm not coming over. Do you have weed? Okay, well I'm not doing this.
Right.
I know people who literally, like many people who will not get a good job because
they can't smoke weed.
They can't smoke weed. They literally sacrifice all that stuff.
Here's what I'm saying.
So what I'm saying is, it's obvious. If you told me, Austin, you have to give up coffee in order to get a good job. If you told anybody that
you're using your personal,
I know. That's why I said I wanted to
judge it on everyone else.
That's why I said I wanted to shift away. How many people do you know would give up coffee for a good job versus how many people you know that smoke weed that would give up weed for a good job?
Coffee does not make you feel the same way that marijuana makes you feel. Marijuana enhances everything. That doesn't mean that without it, normal life is not like normal life.
So it says,
here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? If you have sex right now, sober, it feels good as shit.
Yeah.
If you have sex when you smoke marijuana, it feels better. Way better. But if you stop smoking marijuana, sex still feels like it did before you were smoking marijuana. But if you smoke marijuana, it's going to feel better, way better. See what I'm saying?
During the time you're doing it.
Right.
So, but no.
But you're saying...
what I'm trying to tell you is, here's my argument, okay? Marijuana, in my opinion, I do not care if people... I just got to clear the air here for people who do not know me. I do not care if people smoke marijuana. I believe marijuana should be legalized, just like alcohol is legalized. I think it is perfectly safe, especially if it's just grown and not concentrated. I think that if marijuana was legalized, a lot of people would start smoking it, but a lot of people would stop smoking it because it would lose that cool factor. I think that it would be more safely manufactured if it was legalized. So I think on the whole, it should be legalized. And if you smoke marijuana, that is perfectly fine with me. My mom smokes weed. It's fine. My brother smokes weed. Everybody I know smokes weed except for people in my household. So having said that, there are inarguable physiological differences between marijuana and, say, caffeine. So on the website that I found and that Anthony's found, they have not said the amount of THC and the amount of caffeine. They've not said the amount of dopamine. They've not explained any kind of details like that. And I really do not want to quote a documentary that I watched a few years ago on the exact units. But what I know for a fact is that marijuana produces a good amount of dopamine, and it harms your brain's ability to create dopamine on its own. And on top of that, more importantly, it damages your brain's ability to react to dopamine, which is more important. So when you do normal things, they are not as sweet. And we you're talking about enjoying sex and all.
They're not as sweet as they were before you started smoking cannabis, or they're not as sweet as they are when you smoke cannabis?
So person is identical twin. You have two people that are identical. One person has been smoking weed for 10 years, okay? Or let's say 10 years up to this point, and he is off. he's not smoked weed in 3 days. THC is completely out of the system. He does something. Okay, he gets a promotion at work. He gets a pat on the back from his father. He's always wanted, right? Versus the other guy, who, and this is assuming that his dad's not super proud of him. It's all identical, right? Mm-hmm. Chemically speaking, the guy who has not smoked weed, his brain is going to be more sensitive to dopamine, just like someone who's never eaten sugar is going to be really sensitive to sugar and think it's nasty. Okay. Meaning that the person who is used to the dopamine, or their brain is ratcheted down its sensitivity, day-to-day things are not going to be as good to him, especially if he's done it in high doses and frequently. That's just a scientific fact.
You keep saying scientific fact, but you're not showing me where that's proven to be a fact.
Okay, and you're not showing me that dopamine, or you're not showing me that methamphetamine does, or not methamphetamine, that marijuana does not produce, or THC does not produce dopamine damage or dopamine insensitivity.
I just pulled up this study if you want to see it.
Yeah. So we looked on this website. It's the, hold on one second here, the U.S. National Library of Medicine and National Institutes of Health. We found one study here that's quoting, saying that they couldn't find any evidence of marijuana deficiencies or any kind of dopamine production deficiencies. It didn't go into detail on the receptor damage, and I don't know what kind of levels they were subjected to of THC, and how long they had been doing it for prior to that. And then on the exact same website, we found another article saying that dopamine does in fact create it says cannabis exerts identical effects on the dopamine system of other drugs per dopamine unit, despite general misconceptions that it's unique. So I'm not sure on the science of this, to be honest with you, because the internet is so packed with so many discussions on both sides. So again, that in that situation, the lack of evidence is the only reason I turn to my own personal. I hate it when other people do this, when they say, well, I know a guy, so this is the case. Well, I know a guy that a cop was mean to, so all cops are mean to those kinds of people. No, that's stupid. But I've seen with my own two eyes so many people not even apply for a job when they need one because they can't give up weed. Or won't give it up. And the whole won't give it up is part of the consciousness thing. When does it stop being can't and start being won't?
I think it's always won't and not can't. Right, so if it's always won't, then it's not addictive.
Well, that means nothing's addictive. So you could give up a opioid. You could give up meth for a job.
No.
You could.
No. Can't and won't without dealing with like crazy side effects is what I'm saying. Weed, when you don't want to quit, is because you don't want to go without that feeling. But it's not that when you do quit, you get a different feeling. If you stop doing opioids, you will be sick to your stomach and throwing up. It's same with alcoholism. If you stop, alcoholism is one of those rare drugs that you can literally die from if you just go cold turkey. You can literally die from being an alcohol addict. That is addiction.
No, everybody knows caffeine's addictive, right?
Right.
Everybody knows that.
But you have withdrawals.
Yeah, sure.
You don't have marijuana withdrawals.
There's cannabis withdrawal syndrome.
This cannabis withdrawal syndrome is saying that you don't experience things the same for a certain amount of time. Your dopamine levels are not going the same. That is not the same thing from sweating and scratching when you don't have something. That is completely different.
Hold on one second here.
I think it's subjective. And I say that from experience because I've never had a withdrawal from marijuana back when I used to smoke it. And I smoked it a lot. And I know other people who smoked it a lot and quit cold turkey for a job or for probation or for the military. And they're not going crazy. They quit. And it's like, oh, well, that sucks. I don't get to smoke weed anymore. But it's not the same addiction as other drugs. So if you want to say it's addictive because technically it changes something chemically in your brain that you can easily go without, that's fine. But in comparison.
So, okay, I'm looking here on drugabuse.com, which is a pretty unbiased thing. It seems that we've been caught in the middle of a debate that's been going on between experts for a few years. It says that withdrawal symptoms are very different depending on which drug is involved. It has been debated for several years whether or not marijuana can cause withdrawal symptoms in heavy users who stop taking the drug. However, in 2013, the American Psychiatric Association definitively included cannabis withdrawal in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DMS, a handbook used by the U.S. health professionals that lists all medically recognized mental disorders. And then it goes down to list symptoms of marijuana withdrawal. Physical symptoms include, it says common physical symptoms of withdrawal include stomach discomfort, sweating, tremor, fever and chills, headache. Psychological symptoms include restlessness, insomnia, fatigue, diminished appetite, irritability, anorexia, anxiety, and depression. So that, yeah.
Have you ever heard of anybody with those side effects?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Who?
Sawyer when he tried to quit.
Sawyer was throwing up and sick from this?
Yeah, he was sick, and he started calling me, and yeah, he wanted my help. Yeah.
He wanted your help with what? He was throwing up?
He said he was trying to stop. He didn't know if he could. He wanted my help, basically. So I went over there and tried to help him out, and then he's back on it and won't talk to me. So, yeah.
I don't know, man. It doesn't... I don't know. Maybe in rare situations.
All I'm saying is it makes sense to me how the science works. It makes sense to me that's why people like it. It makes sense to me how the withdrawal is there. So from a scientific standpoint, I think this, and this is at drugabuse.com/library/marijuana withdrawal. So
I mean, it's just one of the, like, addiction is, like I said, it's subjective. Like, I don't know, if we're talking about pain.
Yeah.
Like, if you get stung by a bee, is it pain? Yeah, it's pain. Compared to what? Is it addictive? Yeah, compared to what, though?
Well, I don't think...
Compared to everything
else.
How
addictive? How addictive?
Right, it's not that very addictive.
Well, what I was saying from the get-go is how addictive is it? The original discussion, we're talking about consciousness, and I think we're getting very far away from that. But since we're talking about drugs, which is a huge component of consciousness, marijuana, and we're talking about psychedelics and why they're illegal, marijuana is one of the many drugs where the science of it is thrown out in the air. You, for example, at the beginning of this conversation that we've recorded, did not believe that marijuana had withdrawal symptoms, did not create dopamine, did not do dopamine damage, and there is argument for both sides. There's studies on both sides. This is saying that U.S. professional medical professionals have classified it as an actual disorder.
Did you say that they said something about the dopamine levels in that?
In the one from the...
no, in this one right here that you just...
Let me look.
...called law.
It does not go into the science of how it works, but I've not read the full article.
Well, I think you should... Because, I mean, what you said was...
Okay, I'm going to read the full article and come right back. So, we read the full article, and we're looking through this. It's like a medical... like an MD thing, like WebMD. It doesn't explain to you the exact chemistry of things work, but we've gone through the sources at the bottom. I pulled up one of them explaining the symptoms, and it's from drugabuse.gov. So I think you can make an argument that the government has some kind of conspiracy against marijuana. Otherwise, you have to use it as a good source. But basically, yeah. Anthony's brought up the good point that it doesn't say anything about dullness, although I'd say that, that's part of the problem, and also being depressed and anxious or worried and restless might contribute to that. What are your thoughts?
I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, and I didn't even think of that until you said it. But I mean, It is a government site, and they do have an outlaw.
Yeah.
So would they say anything good about it?
I don't think that the scientists it's possible.
No, I don't
think so.
I just can't see them.
It's just
here's what I'm saying. I want to look up from the same website the psychedelics too, and just see if they say anything positive about any of the drugs they have outlawed. Because to me, it doesn't seem like they would do that.
They're probably not. Well, I really don't want to. I really don't want to have a constant monologue of us looking up things online.
Right. Yeah.
I really just want to get back into more of the philosophy of this, because we can't write the laws. So, just in conclusion on this marijuana bit, the science is murky at best. It's really foolish for anyone to say, marijuana is addictive or it's not addictive. So I think both Anthony and I are being foolish to say anything definitively, because most of this research has been conducted in 2016, which means that it's ongoing. It's subject to change.
Absolutely.
So that's where we'll leave that. I will say that from my own personal experiences and what I've seen some people go through, I don't trust myself enough to be an Anthony that can pitch it through the curve. Okay, and I think there's plenty of other addicting things like food.
You don't trust yourself?
No, I don't trust myself enough to throw that one bad habit away if I need to. And you don't have money.
Yeah, I understand the money, but I feel like you have the willpower.
Well, that's wonderful, but I'd rather use it somewhere else. So
I guess that's true.
So going back from this, the real thing is with psychedelics and just mind expansion. And I didn't want to get off on the politics and the details and science of why certain things are legal or illegal. Obviously, lots of things are illegal for money, for power. People want the population to think a certain way or not, and they want to achieve certain results, and that's why things are legal or illegal. But as far as what the psychedelics do to the brain, there's probably even less research on. I know a lot more people smoking marijuana than I do doing shrooms, just way more. Okay, so there's probably even less information on the dopamine production and things like that. But I know if something feels awesome, it's probably bad for you.
What?
Yeah, I said it. Yeah.
If something feels good, it's probably bad for you.
If you ingest something that makes you feel good, it's probably bad for you.
So, food?
Yeah, if something tastes good, spit it out.
So, steak?
Yeah.
Is bad for you?
Yeah, if you just... steak has probably beef is the number one cause of heart disease, maybe, or right behind chicken, fried chicken. What I'm saying is, obviously, you can have steak, you can have chicken, you can smoke a joint, you can have sex, but anything without moderation can be bad for you. Too much water, well, distilled water can kill you.
Right, but see what I'm saying though? Like from your original, what you just said, anything that it feels good is bad for you.
If you let me revise that. Anything that you overindulge in that feels good is probably very bad for you. And the reason for that is your brain is going to remap itself to focus on that. Your brain, what your brain does every day is it tries to get as much dopamine as possible. Okay? So if you're full and you stop eating, or let's say I'm eating, I have an unlimited supply of food and I keep eating, right? Mm-hmm. And assume I don't pop. Once I get full, my brain is going to stop giving me dopamine, essentially. So that's when I know to cut it the hell out, okay?
Right.
Other chemicals are involved with that process, but the end goal is the dopamine shuts off, right? When I get hungry again, dopamine is all about wanting. So the stuff, like if I start cooking and I start smelling food, that's what starts producing dopamine. If I'm getting weed from my favorite dealer, okay, if I'm used to that process, just seeing an alleyway is enough to produce dopamine. So if you do something that produces a shit ton of dopamine, your brain's going to say, screw everything else. Screw my children. I'm gonna go, get my heroin. That's how that works. Now, obviously, I don't think marijuana is going to be a big enough, unless you're a very weak person or you're doing some kind of extreme concentrated version of it.
But don't you see the fact that you just said, unless you're a weak person, on the contrary, you could be a strong person who
for your kids. I'm saying I don't think you'd give up what I'm saying is I don't think you'd give up your children for weed unless you're a very weak person.
No, but I'm saying anything that you overindulge in, you could, even though it's bad for you, in your brain might instinctually think about that 24/7. If you have strong willpower, you can verge off from that. Am I wrong?
It kind of depends. It really depends on the amount of dopamine you're dealing with, because you would agree that some people could kick heroin,
and they have.
Yeah, lots of people can't. Some people can't kick caffeine. You know what I mean?
But isn't that that's a willpower thing?
It is a willpower thing, but the difficulty level is not. Okay.
Right.
So the level of difficulty is the same. It's you know, that's just the way it is.
Right.
So
which brings us back to consciousness, right?
Yeah. Well,
because it's not physical. It's thoughts.
Well, no.
Willpower is thoughts.
Thoughts, all of that is everything's physical. Like a computer is a physical thing, believe it or not. Even the programs.
Is not physical.
Yeah, they are. They're electrons running around in your brain, and they're affected by the physical components of your brain and the different chemicals. Okay.
A thought is physical.
Yeah.
You sure about that?
I didn't say it had. Yes, it is. I am sure about that. I'll stick to that. And that's maybe a different way people think about thoughts, because I get that I could think of anything in my head and no one would know about it. So it seems like it. But if we look at the different, like, let's say pornography and the way that changes people's brains, okay? That might be a very interesting. This is turning more into a podcast about addiction than it is about consciousness, but obviously that's a component of consciousness.
Right.
So addiction is bad because it basically harms your brain's ability.
So can we look at electrons and neurons?
Yeah.
But we can't look at a thought.
Yeah, we can.
We can look at a thought.
They have new technology, and it's one of the more developing things where we can actually put thoughts into people by certain electrical stimulation on the brain.
Really?
And we can actually see a rudimentary version of what people are thinking. It's not like, we put it on their head and we can see, what they did in 1989, who actually killed the girl kind of level, but they can see that. So yes, it's there, obviously. The electrons exist. It's all there, okay? And even if we couldn't see it, it's still there, okay? Even if, was the brain there even when the ancient Egyptians thought it was useless and they didn't know about it really? Yeah, it was still there and still doing all the stuff our brains are doing.
Right.
But, so it's just reality. So going back, I want to talk about an even bigger topic. If a heroin addict does heroin until the day she dies, right? Or he or she dies. They do heroin, they get their dopamine levels all the way up every day. Let's say they had unlimited money supplies, right? And they just did heroin all the time. And they were just, happy as shit, artificially. And then they die. To us, we would look at that as sad, right?
Right.
To them,
might have been happy.
They might have been more happy than any human who's ever existed.
Right.
What is good and what is bad? There is none.
It's subjective.
It's subjective, exactly.
What is pretty, what is ugly.
So, rich and poor. We tend to look at, rich people as good and poor people as bad, not as far as how they are, but as far as their success levels. A rich person is successful. A poor person is less successful. That's the way we look at it. Isn't it based on happiness? What is happiness? Is happiness only real happiness if it's caused by stuff that's in our environment, like our children and our families,
right,
and good food and a good house and all that kind of stuff?
Or is happiness just dopamine?
So if you get something that produces that dopamine anyway, is that happiness? Is it a long life? How do we actually determine that?
Right.
So I think that is really the argument. We've been getting too deep into the weeds on whether or not it's real, or whether or not marijuana is good or bad. Why, or any other drug? Who determines that? Okay, why is it the government cares whether or not people are ODing? Do the people want to OD? If you ask a drug addict, do you want to OD? Right. If they're not having withdrawals and they're sober, they'll say, no, I don't want to die from this. Right. Okay. If you took away the risk of them dying, I think they would be perfectly content with it. Right. Yeah, this is fine. I'll sit in this chair for the rest of my life and just keep pumping heroin into me.
Right.
Isn't that scary? Isn't that a scary thought that you could sit there in a chair and not see, not hear, not smell, not do anything, just you and your thoughts on that drug? So long as you didn't die, you'd have no desire for anything else.
Right.
No food, no sex, no company.
You ask me, is it scary?
Well,
just kind of seems like a part of the world we live in. I mean, we are these species that have these brains that release dopamine that makes us feel a certain type of way. So it's just,
would those people be happier than would those people be happier? And I want to say really happier, but what is real happiness? Is it all in our heads? Or going back to what we were talking about earlier, is there something beyond that? Is there something where our consciousness lies that if we were to move it to a computer, would they all of a sudden be unhappy?
Right.
You know, if we took away, would they all of a sudden be unhappy?
Because there's no dopamine in a computer.
Could a computer be happy?
Right. That's a good question.
Exactly. So that's, and I don't think there's really answers for this, to be honest with you.
Until we finally do it.
Until it's actually done. Or maybe not. Here we are, where we are an advanced species, for what we know, the most advanced species in the universe. You know? Yeah, so far. I mean, have we found another species more
No, we
advanced than
haven't,
us?
but I mean, mathematically speaking, that's absurd to say that.
No, it's not absurd to say we're the most advanced species that we know of.
No, but it's absurd to say that we're the most advanced species in the universe.
I don't think so. If you think about it like this, we evolved relatively quickly. Okay?
We've only been around for a blink.
Human beings have been around for a blink, but life has not been around for a blink. The universe is like 13 or 14 billion years old.
I didn't even think it was that old.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 8 billion. You could be right, though.
The Earth is like, I think, 5 billion years old. I think the universe is like 13.7 billion years old.
I thought the...
Or maybe 14.7. I can't remember. Hold on.
Yeah, you're right. But I think it's 13.7.
Okay. Yeah, I hit the nail on the head there. But the Earth has been around for, like, I think 5 billion years, and life has been around for 3 billion years. I think that's roughly the numbers. So my point is, life has been around for a good chunk of the universe, because the stars, all there was at the very beginning was hydrogen after the Big Bang. And so that hydrogen coalesced into denser and denser objects to make stars, and eventually those stars died through supernovas and the massive explosions. That's what created the heavier elements like carbon and iron.
All that life doesn't matter because we're talking about our species.
Well, I'm trying to address like if we found another species that was intelligent, okay,
Right.
they could be made out of, maybe they wouldn't be carbon based, maybe they'd be based out of silicon or something
Right.
like that. Would that change what consciousness means? Would they be conscious in the same way that we are? Okay, that's why it's relevant. And so what I'm trying to say is there other life out there?
No, but we're talking
Yeah.
about intelligence, not consciousness. Because we said the most intelligent species in the universe.
Yeah, but so wouldn't you argue?
You don't have to be conscious to be intelligent.
Well,
Because a computer is intelligent to a certain degree.
kind of. Yeah, you're right. But when we say intelligent, what I'm saying is there conscious life out there?
Right.
Okay, and you know, I don't want, you know, you're not a genie. You know, don't try to. I don't want to be pinned down for that word. What I mean, like my connotation is there life out there that if we had some kind of translation, could they understand stuff? Like, do they look at the stars too? Can they look? You know, do they process visuals? Do they understand language? Do they know what death is? Do they, you know, do these raw questions that have nothing to do?
To me, it's just so naive and absurd because we were just talking on the last podcast how civilization at the longest has been around for 20,000 years, which again is a blink.
Yeah.
So if the universe has been around for 13 billion years and there's a species out there that has had civilization for, I don't know.
Well, no. My point is, it took you got to understand, life could not have begun 13.7 billion years ago, right after the Big Bang.
Right.
All there was hydrogen. It took billions of years for the first stars to actually clump together with that hydrogen and become a star. Billions more years for them to burn out. Billions more years for the largest stars to die and have supernovas, which created the heavy elements like iron and carbon. Billions more years for there to be enough of that scattered out in far enough places for planets to be created, because you can't just create a planet out of hydrogen. So literally, life could have only begun very recently, maybe max 7 billion years ago.
That's a lot of fucking time.
Not when you're dealing with the age of the universe. So what I'm saying is our life began just, I think, 5 billion, or the Earth began like 5 billion years ago.
Right.
Our Earth has been around. It's going to be, when everything is said and done, it would be considered one of the original planets. Okay?
Uh-huh.
So what I'm saying is life began a pretty good clip of the universe. So life has been around a healthy percentage of the age of the universe.
It's just,
does that make sense?
I just don't understand how you can say that. We have only been getting our shit together for like, how long have we had electricity?
So here's a question:
150 years?
Is consciousness and intelligence a guarantee? If 65 million years ago an asteroid hadn't impacted the Earth and wiped out the dominant race, which was the dinosaurs, which was a race of brawn and killing rather than intellect, would intelligence have evolved? Probably not. Okay? Probably not. It was because of that mass extinction event that mammals happened to evolve, okay, and grass happened to develop, that we had intelligence. So it's not crazy to think that there are dinosaurs or something like that, which was the linear path, perhaps, on some other planet, and they didn't have that asteroid impact.
It's crazy that you know how many stars are in just this galaxy alone, not to mention this universe, not to mention we don't even know this is the only universe.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about our universe. Yeah.
Right. Well, okay, so this universe, to think that we are the cream of the crop out of this universe when there are billions and billions and billions of galaxies.
Well, what I said was we are the most intelligent entity or anything we've found. We're the most intelligent thing.
Found shit. What does that mean?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
We haven't found anything.
What I'm saying is
we're the only thing.
Yeah. So we started focusing on it. And I said we're the most intelligent thing. And when I said that, I meant more comparing us to animals and pre-existing things that we're aware of. We're aware of billions. Well, we haven't found 80% of the species in the ocean yet.
Right, but we obviously understand that there's not buildings and cars in the ocean and stuff. If there was, we'd be able to see radiation.
Maybe there was life on Mars that was intelligent. I doubt it.
Maybe. Right, but if you're saying that we're the most intelligent thing that we found, obviously, that's not saying
maybe we are the result. And like this is like in the Alien movies and Prometheus. I think the premise is what it's evolving to is that
aliens put us here.
Aliens put the seed of life on Earth, and eventually we're evolving into their image. Probably not. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe
they said this. The Great Sphinx of Egypt was dug up because the water markings. There's water markings on it from the last time that there was water in Egypt.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know that. I don't like getting into fringe history because like people make shit up. I would say.
I mean, it's just cool for conversation. You did just bring up the Prometheus, so I'm saying.
Well, no. Well, I'm not saying hey they found. I'm not saying this is a fact. I'm saying anything's possible.
No, it's possible, and that's why I said it's possible.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, as far as the existence of life on other planets, we do not know if there's life on other planets. I am very well aware the Milky Light goes at 186,282 miles per second.
I thought they were comfortable with saying now it's like a mathematical fact. Just because
and let me explain why. Okay, life. Okay, is very complex. But let me explain what I mean. The universe is huge. That's the only reason this is even a conversation, okay? Unless there's another fact I'm going to bring up in a couple minutes here. But hear my thought out all the way. So, life began on Earth. I think 5 billion years ago, or some maybe 4 billion years ago, give or take a billion years. I mean, who's counting, right? So, because of that, we have to look and see what those first organisms, how they evolved, what let them survive and be successful on Earth. So we have to look and see how common an environment like Earth is in the universe, okay? The universe is huge. There are an innumerable amount of galaxies and stars out there. The Milky Way galaxy, which is just a speck of dust on a huge beach of grains of sand, but the Milky Way galaxy by itself is 100,000 light years across, right? Mm-hmm. And think about that. There's like 30-something million seconds in a year, and for every second, light travels at 186,202 miles per second. It's incomprehensibly big. I mean, that's ridiculous. So if I shone a light on one side of the Milky Way, it's like 100,000 years for it to get to the other side.
Right.
And right now, it's colliding with an even bigger galaxy, Andromeda. Okay, so the nearest star is like 1 light year away. Okay. So think about that. There's so many stars just in our galaxy, but
here's what I'm saying.
But the thing is, finding there's only a few planets in our galaxy
In the Goldilocks zone.
that could support life.
The Goldilocks zone.
But the thing is, so if you look at the universe as a whole, there are probably millions of planets.
More than that.
Maybe billion. Well, maybe. Maybe
There are billions of galaxies.
Sure, but billions is a very comprehensible number. Okay, it's not getting into the trillions, so it's a huge fucking number.
No, right.
But what I'm trying
billions
to
times billions of stars, billions of galaxies.
say, a galaxy. Let's say that for every galaxy there are 1,000 planets that are suitable for life. Okay, which is a stretch because you have to have the gravitational pull right. The star has to be a certain proximity away from it and a certain heat. So let's say there's 1,000, and then let's say there's billions of galaxies out there, right? So that puts it into the trillions of planets that could potentially house life.
There is a rough estimate of 10 trillion galaxies in the universe.
That's a lot.
And just in our galaxy, there's 100 billion stars. Mm-hmm. So multiply 10 trillion by...
Hold on, one second, my laptop died.
By 100 billion. That'll give you a rough number.
24 zeros after it. But what I'm trying to tell you is, even though that's a huge number of potentially hospitable planets, and it might be trillions, that's perfectly fine, of hospitable planets. What I'm trying to say is, because we're not looking at the total number of stars, looking at how many of those can actually hold a life, right? The spark of life, you're taking it for granted.
Right.
Just because a planet could have life, let's say there's Earth and it's exactly like this planet, doesn't mean that life came together.
No, but it's naive to think that it's not, because if we only have this one, we only have one frame of reference. Mm-hmm. Is Earth?
Yeah, exactly.
And on Earth, there's life.
I'm not starting this argument saying, here's my thesis right now. It is not unreasonable to think that we might be the only intelligent life out there, or our conscious life.
I think that's almost ignorant to say.
No, and I'm trying to explain mathematically why it's not. What I'm saying is, if there is other intelligent life out there, there's probably not millions or an innumerable amount if the universe is finite.
Why do you say probably? Because really, it's
because we don't know.
So think about what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because we don't know. That doesn't even make sense.
No, we can calculate probability. So you understand what I'm saying?
So probability.
I can tell you,
if we only have one planet of reference that's in the Goldilocks zone and there's life on it, we're 1 for 1. Therefore, 1 for 1 means that by probability we would have to say that in planets with the Goldilocks zone there would be life.
No,
because this is the only planet that we know with the Goldilocks zone. We can see life on.
No, we found hundreds of planets that could support life.
But we can't see through the atmosphere on those planets.
You couldn't have seen through the Earth's atmosphere.
Right. Here's what I'm saying. We can only see through the atmosphere of one planet in the Goldilocks zone,
mm-hmm.
Earth.
Yeah.
On this planet in the Goldilocks zone, there is life.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't see through the atmosphere of those other planets.
Yeah.
So therefore, if on this planet we can see there's life, and you want to talk about probability, we have to go by the numbers.
Let's play that game. Let's say that there is intelligent life or conscious life or a combination of the two out there, right? Okay.
Right.
Okay. High functioning life forms. What is the likelihood that they were just created or just came into existence at the same time we did?
I would say highly likely.
No. What I mean is, if they were around, they probably have been around for a long time.
There's probably some that's been around. There's probably some that's been around as long as us, and there's probably some that are just starting yesterday.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, let's say there's tons of them out there.
Right.
The vast majority of them would have come 2 blinks ago, or longer, maybe 20 blinks ago, or maybe a day ago in the history of time. Does that make sense?
Maybe it depends. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, because if it's a cause and effect, then when a planet is created and it goes through certain chemical changes.
Think about it like this. Look at this like birthday. So if you have the entire cosmic existence, or the last 13.7 billion years, spread out on a calendar for 1 year. Okay, we as a species arrived like an hour ago. Okay, or maybe like a minute. I forget the exact example. So more than likely, our counterparts, the vast majority of them, if they are out there, okay, came into existence not on our birthday at the exact hour of our birth. They would have come maybe a day before, or maybe 2 days before, or maybe a month before.
Right, I get it.
So what I'm saying is, let's say there's a lot of them, okay? Most of them would have had more than enough time to become incredibly advanced. Okay? We are not looking through their atmospheres for it. We're looking for radio signals. We're looking for things of intelligence, like advances.
You know, they just saw something like a month ago that is emitting signals.
No.
You didn't see that?
No, I didn't see it. I just feel like if something like that really happened, it'd be like all over everywhere. Like,
it was on the news.
What news? But hold on. Don't ADD. Let's not get off on that. Let me focus on my thought here, okay? Because I have so many of these I'm trying to get through. So let's say that they've been around for a day on the cosmic calendar. You would think that they would have already come up with radio technology, and they would have already come to the same conclusions we have, maybe, that there's other intelligent life out there. Or you would think at least a few of these races would do that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. It only takes 100,000 years for light to get across the galaxy, okay? And with the millions and potentially billions of years that these intelligent races or conscious intelligent races like us potentially could have existed, we could have already been receiving radio signals and things like that from other galaxies.
Well, here's the question: how, like our technology on Earth, how far do our radio signals go?
Light goes pretty far away because it's basically light. It just at a different frequency, and we can see other. So the observable universe is the answer. It's going to get more faint, but we think that a race.
But how fast does a radio wave move?
The speed of light.
The speed of light.
Yes.
So therefore, if something is 1,000 light years away, we wouldn't see it yet.
For 1,000 years.
For 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Well, how long have we had technology to see it?
Just recently.
Recently.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, we just got here. Okay. Right. So that means that if there is other intelligent life out there, or I say the word intelligent life meaning aware life,
sentient beings, right?
Doesn't even have to be. It could be us. It could be literally us with green skin. I don't know. But you would think they've already been around for a long time. So reasonably, the question is maybe they've gotten so advanced, or maybe they've all died out. Who knows? Maybe that they're so far away that they're outside of the observable universe. Who knows? But my point is, we've not seen any kind of signal from any advanced civilization that has already been created in the past 13.7 billion years. Do you understand? We've not. So
we haven't seen anything since we've been able to see things.
Well, here's my point. If we as a species are sending out a constant stream of radio waves to the observable universe, saying hello, we come in peace, all that kind of crap you hear about in the movies, right? We're sending that out. We're going to continue sending that out so long as our civilization continues to be what it is today. Okay? Mm-hmm. We're going to continue to do that as we find more and more bandwidths and different kinds of signaling. We're going to continue sending that out, right?
So I have a question. And I don't want to verge off, but I just always wonder, and I respect your opinion. Is the Roswell shit bullshit?
I don't know. Probably.
Do you think it's bullshit?
I mean, I don't have an opinion on it. I just don't think it's very likely. Right. But yeah. So we have a guest in our audience, Josh Asbury, and he does believe it. I don't know. I don't concern myself with things like that because there is no easily accessible evidence. That is, if you go down every rabbit hole and you find some article,
you are a politics man. So then hypothetically, if something like that did happen, would they tell us?
I think that it's unlikely that if there was a race that was advanced enough to come to Earth,
right, that they would actually get captured.
That they would actually get captured or crash, and if they wanted to make their presence known, they would make it known. And I don't think that it would just happen to fall into the arms of the U.S. government. I mean, it's just very, and if the U.S. government really put up that kind of concerted effort, they would have used that technology. And I've seen so many debunkings where they're like, oh, well, they got this 747 or this military rocket, they took it from and then it's complete BS because it actually turns out a German scientist thought of that way. I think it was 1956 when Roswell happened. Is that right?
Something like that.
Either that or Elvis. I get the two mixed up in my head. Okay. So anyway, going back to what I'm saying, very, very simple. Let's say that in like a million galaxies away, there was intelligent life that existed a billion years ago, okay? And they are still there, and they've been putting out signals ever since then. We would see that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
We would see it. And so the fact that we don't tells me that there's an issue somewhere. And it means life could still exist, but it's a lot less common than we take for granted. Or they've died off.
Right.
Which would be very tragic, I guess.
Or they're too far for us to get the signals yet.
Or they're too far for us to get. Well, potentially.
Potentially.
Well,
there's different situations that it could be, but I do think it's naive to think that we are the smartest or the only things out there.
I don't think that. I'm just saying that. I'm trying to give you I was trying to give you a mathematical explanation as to why we might be some of the few, if not the only, existing race right now. The reason for that, we can see...
Right, because we haven't seen anything.
No. If the universe was infinite, okay?
Is it?
Let me answer that, okay? If the universe was infinite, we have theories about parallel universes that dwell within ours. We have theories that go out the ass.
Well, quantum physicists now are saying that there's 30 different dimensions.
Well, let me answer your question. The string theory said there's 11 dimensions.
No, that's what I'm saying. It was 11. Now they're saying it's 30.
Well, it's like genders, right? But what I'm trying to say is let me answer your question here before we go into a different topic, okay? The observable universe, okay? What that means is we can see the universe, okay? We have telescopes in space and on Earth, and we can actually, a lot of people don't know this, we can actually see they call it the observable universe, okay? So it's light that goes out, okay? It's less than 13.7 billion light years across, I believe. So what that means is we can actually see the parameter of the universe, which means as far as we know, there is an edge to the universe. The universe is not infinite.
It's expanding though, right?
It's expanding, but it's not gaining more mass. All it means is the objects are getting farther and farther apart. Okay, yeah. So it's not creating more. So what that means is, with all the evidence we have, is that the universe is not infinite. Okay, because of that, even though it's huge, we can start to look at the numbers and calculate probability.
We can't see like 80% of the universe, though.
Yeah, we can.
No, we can't see dark matter.
Dark matter and dark energy have mass, but they could literally be passing through your body right now.
But they're like 6 times more dense than normal matter.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there could be life on a dark matter planet. It's like some kind of dark energy. It could be in a different dimension. It's really, really fringe science shit.
Right, but that's
not what I'm talking about.
If it takes up 80-something% of the universe and we can't see it, then we can't see 80-something% of the universe.
But it's in our universe because we can detect it. Does that make sense?
Right.
We can detect it. It's just light doesn't bounce off of it.
Right, so we can't see it. So we don't know what's in it.
Well, it's like saying that we can't see glass, therefore there could be a planet in there. This doesn't make sense.
No, because we can't even see through it.
Yeah, we can. There could be dark matter passing through us right now or right in front of us, okay? But I can still see you.
So how do we know that it's there?
Because it has gravitational pull. That's how we know. I think like 6% of the matter in the universe is actual regular matter. Now, it could be that there's universes or dimensions that are operating within our... I mean, I don't know. Nobody knows this stuff. It's all theory. But let me focus on what we're saying. As far as we can see things and we can tell things, and as far as we could fly a rocket ship to it, even if it took trillions of years, okay? There's an observable universe that's finite, okay? There's a number of galaxies that are finite that we can look at. It could be, we say trillions or billions or what? Like, was it 100 trillion you said?
100 trillion galaxies.
That's a very tangible number, okay? If you multiply the U.S. debt by 5...
10 trillion galaxies.
10 trillion?
100 billion stars.
Okay. So if you cut the U.S. debt in half, we have $2 for every galaxy. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of debt, but that's a very tangible number. Does that make sense?
Right.
So to say there's only a few thousand planets in each is because finding a hospitable planet is very rare. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's only so many planets, right? Mm-hmm. So that brings that. So we're talking about how many instances is life possible? So
How many Goldilocks zones are there?
well, no, not even that. We're going to get more specific than that. So we look at and we say, okay, the Milky Way galaxy is very common. It's like a regular galaxy, right? Okay, so out of this regular galaxy that's 100,000 light years across, there are X amount of planets that are hospitable we found. Okay, so let's say there's 10,000, which is a lot more than what we found, but it's a very tangible number like that, right? And then we multiply that number by the number of galaxies. That gives you a probability. So it goes down from 100 or 10 trillion galaxies down to X amount of planets. So let's say that there is 100 trillion planets that could support life. Okay? Now we have to ask ourselves, the spark of life, the first organisms were incredibly advanced. They say it's like putting a chimpanzee at a typewriter and expecting him to just so happen to type a library. Okay,
Right.
That's how specific the first organisms were.
They
in
say
DNA.
that, but I mean, what does that mean?
Well,
I mean, is that accurate?
It means that the first set of DNA was so complex that they're confused as to how it even started. Okay,
Right, well,
it's called the
that
spark
comes-
of life.
The like primordial soup and shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, some people say God did that. Some people say that it just was. There's a new theory out now that it's like that matter tries to find energy, and so that's how it arranged itself like that. It's really, really complicated. People don't know. Nobody knows how the fuck it happened. So the likelihood of that happening is very low, and that takes the number down from 100 trillion to a very low number.
How do we know that it's low and it's not just a result of the right chemicals, the right?
Because we've done it in a lab. We put electricity, because they say that it was
We've
right.
done it in a lab, but we haven't
Yeah.
done it in an ocean.
Yeah, we have.
We've done it in an ocean.
Yeah, they've done
and
it. Yeah.
filled up the ocean with it. No, we haven't.
What do you? No. That's not how it worked. What they say happened was there was a part in the ocean, okay, that had the right chemical compounds. I forget where I actually studied this in
Yeah,
college.
like turned into amino acids or whatever.
Yeah, and they put electricity through it, and it did that. The problem was it wasn't life. Okay, life that's like building a computer out of Play-Doh or of silicon. Okay, you have to really articulate where the stuff is. You couldn't just. It's like me getting all the chemical compounds and all the raw materials from my computer and throwing it off a building and expecting it to magically assemble into a CPU. Okay, or me throwing my clothes in the laundry machine and opening it up and it's magically folded. Okay, it could happen just by the way the clothes are randomly tumbled, but it's so rare that it never does happen. Does that make sense? Unless the new theory is that some matter tries to find the most efficient way energy operates. That's the new theory, and that eventually over millions of years created the correct spark of life. We don't know, so let's just accept that, okay? But the thing is, it was a miracle that it happened regardless, okay? We can all agree on that. So that reduces the number of planets that it could happen
But
on.
is it a miracle if it is just a cause and effect? Is it still a miracle?
Yes.
Why? Because
You still have to have so many different things to happen to it that all those planets are not going to have that exact specific set of chemicals, that exact specific set of electricity, and all of that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? For that to happen, and then it has to survive. Okay, so it has to. So then, imagine if an asteroid had come to Earth and destroyed that.
Right.
Nothing would exist. Okay, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So that reduces it to a very finite amount. Then we have to say, of all the planets that, I mean, there were several times where life was almost eradicated on Earth through comets and asteroids and freezes, and you know, it's crazy, right? If you look at the history of the Earth, let's say life did exist on other planets, it could have been killed, eradicated by that, or severely altered, which led to its demise, or maybe the star that supported it went out. It'd have to survive. So let's say that now we finally have the few planets left that actually had life on it. Which one of those created intelligent life or advanced life or conscious life? Even fewer. Of those, which of those intelligent lives survived till today? How far away are they? You see how it narrows it down? So that was my thought process when I said we don't know what's out there.
Well, do you believe in infinity?
Infinity what? The number?
No, in the universe.
I don't believe...
Because technically, if infinity in the universe and the multiverse is real, that means that there's this planet over and over again, but we had the same conversation and you had a blue shirt in one of them, and there's every possibility because it's infinity.
I don't have a belief. I believe it's possible, but I don't believe it. I'm not going to say it is true, because I have to have empirical evidence to say something. I believe it is a possibility because of dark energy and dark matter, and it just makes sense to me. So I believe it's a possibility, but I don't just believe it. I don't accept it as a fact. There's a big difference there.
It's just bizarre to me, the whole concept of infinity. And now they're saying that there's 5 different levels of infinity. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I mean, mathematically, you can have infinity multiplied by anything. So
because there's radical numbers. So on a spectrum, that's like the second level, and then there's every number that won't show up for the answer of an equation. Like pi,
you can treat infinity like a number. I mean, it still goes on forever, but it just goes on. You can have 5 times infinity, and it's 5 infinity.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like in math, it's like on a spectrum, but it doesn't make any sense because infinity is infinity.
Infinity is similar to negative infinity. Infinity is similar to 0, and infinity is similar to 1. Okay, because you can multiply 1 times 5 and it's 5, or you can multiply infinity by 5 and it's 5 infinity. Okay, so my point is, there's gonna be like math people like, how dare you? But my point is that I can believe that. In fact, there's infinite. You can have infinity. You can have infinity to like the second power, or infinity to the 24th power. There's no. I don't know what they mean by that. So I think that going back to what we were talking about when we originally brought up the is there life out there thing and consciousness, if we found intelligent life or conscious life, how would that influence our consciousness? How would that influence religions? How would that influence the economy and our technology?
Boy, I think it would affect all of it, especially religion. I mean, you keep believing this book that was written 2,000 years ago by a man who says whatever, when there's, I don't know, however many other life forms out there that believe different things.
First off, the first half of it was written like 3,000 years ago, and it was written by like a bunch of different guys, and it was actually taken from a bunch of different religions and kind of put into a mosh pit, but nonetheless, it would change everything.
Right.
But the thing is, the likelihood of them showing up, I guess if you really think about it, despite all the crazy alien people, including the guy on the History Channel, it seems almost like, I don't know if the universe is infinite, because the universe is expanding outwards, but that's just the stuff, okay? The space in which it's spanning it out into could go on forever. How long does the blackness of space go on?
Right.
Okay, let's say that you're a ball at the very edge of the universe. Okay.
No, I get it.
So you turn around and you see the universe behind you, and you look forward, and there's nothing but the maybe eternal black. I grab a baseball and I throw the ball. Okay, and assuming that none of the planets and stars behind me fuck with the orbit, I throw that ball. Okay, out into the nothingness. Okay, how long will that ball go? Will it go on for... There's no friction, so if you throw something in space, it goes on forever. Okay, unless it hits something, but there's nothing out there. How long will that ball go on? 100 trillion Google, infinite billion, trillion, infinity times 28 billion quadrillion years plus 3, and 5 seconds. How long will that baseball go? How big is it? Is space so big that there are other observable universes out there
past our universe
that we just haven't seen? Are they around us?
So do you know anything about, like, when they say that it's possible that there's a universe inside every massive black hole? Because I can't wrap my head around the science to that.
But evidently
I don't it's like a new comic theory.
I don't think black holes are that spectacular, because once you do enough research on them, black holes evaporate. So let's say you have a supermassive black hole, and it's going to take incomprehensible amounts of time for a black hole to evaporate, like trillions of years. And I don't say trillions of years lightly, like let's say 100 trillion years. The age of the universe is only 13.7 billion.
No black hole has evaporated yet.
No. I mean, think about like, well, yeah, they have. I mean, we had one evaporate on Earth. You know, the collider, the particle accelerator. They created a black hole, but it evaporated instantly.
What?
And antimatter. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, they knew it would happen, right? And it created antimatter. But the antimatter is the most expensive thing.
I mean, it was a tiny black hole.
We got to do something on antimatter, because I think we'd have a whole podcast on that. It's really, really cool. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is, the bigger a black hole, the longer it takes to evaporate. So what happens is the black hole slowly spits off the matter, the electrons, basically. It spews out that, I think like an atom at a time. I'm not sure at the rate, but if you divide down, just to kind of explain this, let's say that the universe is 13.7 years old. It would take a black hole like 10,000 years to evaporate. It's just incomprehensibly long. But I think if there are other universes out there in space, they could have been around hundreds of trillions of years ago. Right. And the only thing that would be left, other than just rocks that, will sit there for all eternity, which is crazy to think about, is the black holes. And those black holes spit out X-rays and things. And unless, I don't know if they do that constantly, or if that's just when they are eating a star or something like that. They spit out gamma radiation. But my point is, we might be able one day to detect other universes outside of our observable universe.
Right.
Who knows? What if you could look out 20 quintillion, we could use, let's say that the length of the observable universe is a unit of measure, okay? Like one unit of the observable universe. So, if you have two of them, that's two universes. Two universes in size. So let's say you look at 200 trillion universes in size in one direction. What will you find? What will that baseball eventually hit? Will it eventually go to a universe that or maybe there are big bangs that happen everywhere.
Right.
Maybe a big bang could literally happen at any time, anywhere in all of space. There's an even crazier theory that the laws of physics could change at any time. Yeah, I saw that once on a documentary.
Meaning what? Inertia no longer works?
Yeah, right?
Gravity?
Why does it exist? Why does inertia exist? Why does gravity exist? Why do the laws of nature exist?
I don't know, but they're pretty rock solid.
Yeah.
I mean, we see them everywhere.
I really want to know what happens to that baseball. How long can it go? Does it hit a wall? What's through that wall?
Infinity and time are the biggest thing, or they're the most incomprehensible things to me.
But it exists. It has to.
Especially time. Mm-hmm. How can there be a beginning? But how can there be not a beginning? If there's a beginning, what was before that? But there had to be something before that, right? But how is that possible? It's just you can't wrap your mind around it.
Exactly. And you know what? It's scary. You get this dark feeling that comes over.
Yeah.
Comes over your head into your eyebrows almost at the temple.
Every time I think about
how small we are. Not in my pants, thank God, but just in general. How. I guess next time somebody asks how big are you, we'll say, one observable universe unit.
One observable universe unit.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
Interesting.
8 observable universe.
Wow, big guy. Kind of you.
I've seen bigger.
Yeah, well, I won't be fucking with any girls you
Neither will they. Literally creates a black hole. I had a dick, but my black hole. Alright guys, well, we're out of time this week, but we'll see you in the next one.
We will be back soon with more conscious conversation.
And more penis jokes. You can count on it.
No, don't count on the penis jokes.
Count on it, damn it. I can count on my penis. It's so reliable.
Alright guys, nice talking to you.